Hey guys, it's Miss Minion, and we're doing World War I wrap-up, learning targets 3.4, 3.6, and 3.7. Alright, so the America is part of the war. As you remember, we have, this is a pilot, and then this is a segregated unit. So this is like, if you'll remember, America segregated the soldiers in World War I. Okay? So, the American Expeditionary Force, they arrived in France in 1917. And they're commanded by General John Blackjack Pershing. Okay, so he's the big general. And they attacked the Germans on the Western Front. So this is when America arrived. They turned the tide of the war in favor of the Allies because now they had so much more support. And Alvin C. York was the hero from Tennessee. And that's Pershing right here, and this is Alvin C. York on the right. And we will watch a video on Alvin C. York in class. All right, so you can see this is the Western Front. And how the U.S. kind of gets involved in this. So if you look back and forth at these arrows, the green is the United States and the United States troops. Okay. So the Central Powers, how does the war end? Eventually, after a long, drawn-out trench warfare stalemate, the Central Powers give up. It's basically a war of attrition. You're waiting until one side just falls. Germany signed the armistice on November 11th, 1918, and the war ended at 1100 hours on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. The Allies win. 8 to 9 million soldiers were killed, 13 million civilians were killed, and then afterward 50 million were killed in a spread of influenza after the war. So if you remember when I was talking about the trenches, the soldiers brought back diseases to their hometowns, and that ended up spreading disease. So this is a national cemetery, which you've been to one, and just talking about the deaths. So, influenza is what's going to cause all the deaths after World War I, 50 million of them. And this is the spread of the epidemic. And you can see Nashville, it's not too bad, but there's really heavy areas. Okay, this shows you how many people died from influenza. So these are the years. I know that you can't see, but this is the year the war ended. All right, so global peacemaker. So how does this war end? 14 points. 14 points is one of your vocab words, so make sure you got that. This is Woodrow Wilson's plan to bring lasting peace to Europe. The major points of this were we were going to end alliances, reduce military forces, and self-determination for nations. That means that nations that identify with like being German should be German. They should have their independence. And then he created what we call the League of Nations. All right. So we have the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. And basically the other allies, they've been fighting this war a lot longer than Americans, and they want Germany to pay for the war. They feel like Germany is the main cause of this. Even though it started out in Austria-Hungary, Germany is the one who basically brought it to a full world war. The Allied leaders agreed to the League of Nations, and they signed the Versailles Treaty in June 1919. So what were the agreements of the Versailles Treaty? Germans had no choice. They had to sign it, or they were going to risk invasion by all of the Allied powers. Don't forget Italy added to that. And they're very punished. They are severely punished. Their military is limited. They have to return everything that they conquered. The colonies around the world were taken away, and they were forced to pay reparations, which are repayments for like the war. All right, so you can see this is Germany before, and then Germany will get taken, it'll shrink after the war. Okay, so they are forbidden to unite with Austria. There's all these things here. There's a new government. Poland was given a corridor to the Baltic Sea. Okay, so like you can see that there's like a little corridor here. So this is going to kind of change the map of Europe. Germans accept the war guilt because they don't want to be invaded, and they agree to pay the reparations. They agree to divide the German colonies, and they limit their forces. So this is basically what the map after World War I looks like. So Germany is much smaller. Beforehand, this was all part of the Austria-Hungary Empire and German Empire. All right, so the Treaty of Versailles, they also created the League of Nations, which is basically a modern-day United Nations, and the goal of those was to keep the peace between the nations. Why did it fail? Why does this ultimately cause World War II? Because the U.S., after helping Wilson create this 14 points, the U.S. did not want to get involved because they didn't want to get involved with other countries. So they did not want to join the League of Nations. Okay, so League of Nations will set the stage for later the United Nations, but the League of Nations fails and doesn't actually come about. Okay, so You see this is one of my favorite political cartoons. It will probably be on your test. You have Uncle Sam here, and there's this bridge. They're trying to gap this bridge here, and then the keystone, the United States, is missing. So without the United States, the League of Nations will fall. So what are the outcomes? Germany is humiliated, and this is going to aid Hitler's rise to power. Germany is now pushed back into an economic depression. Their country is torn apart. They have no colonies. They don't have a military. So they're going to look for someone to like kind of stand up and create a little bit of nationalism and get their pride back. And that's going to be what leads to World War II. All right. And the U.S. rejected the Versailles Treaty, just like we said, and America returns to isolationism. And that's it, guys. That's it for World War I. See you in class.